Create. It's all about art. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 12 of Create with Franz. We have today the pleasure of having our guest Stephen Young. Hello Steve.
Hi there Franz.
And Steve has been with us twice already. We've been talking about different aspects of art. And today Steve will be talking about how he started an unusual career in theater, scenic art and props just by knocking on the door of a very important place in London. So we're gonna get started with a few questions. First of all, yes Steve, how did you get started? Tell us the story. But remember how you got in, you told us in the last episode, but just summarize for those who didn't get a chance to listen to a previous episode. Your turn.
Sure. So the quick version is that I was on a school trip or a college trip, and I saw the production workshop for the theatre next to where I was having my school trip, and I got away from the party and I literally buzzed the buzzer and asked a very paraphrased question to the person on the other end of the buzzer. Hi there, I'm really interested in theatre arts. Is there any chance I could check out your workshop? And very thankfully, somebody let me in. You know, they didn't just say, buzz off. They let me in, and I was very thankful for that. And it let me into a world of possibilities, of creative possibilities that I wasn't really sure. I hoped that something would be out there that would be interesting, but I wasn't aware of just how interesting that it actually was, and the different divisions within the workshop.
That's great. And it's such an adventurous beginning, right?
Well, I'm very thankful that they were as forthcoming as they were. I mean, I fully psyched myself up that they would say, well, we only give tours on such and such a time, or come back at another time, or it's not quite convenient right now. I was expecting all of that. But the fact that they let me in, I was like, whoa, bonus, excellent. Let's just, let's take this opportunity and see what's possible. So once I gained access and they showed me around, they showed me the different departments. And they have different workshops there, and they have a metal workshop, a woodworking workshop, and a build, and then a painting area. And it just blew my mind at the creativity of all these teams working together to create this outcome.
Yes, because this is 3D and it has color and texture and it has to look good and it has to be very light.
Yes.
You can make real stones and then transport them on stage, and there's all the health and safety. So it is very nice. Say that, for example, somebody wants to learn what happens exactly. So we were talking in pre-production stage about how these objects are designed, they are created, when they are scaled to production. Can you kind of describe the process in what the part that you understood? How does it work?
Sure. Well, they have an external designer. They have somebody that works outside of the studio, and they will give their design to the production workshop, which is where we were. And they would have a scale model, a small model of what they want the theatre production to look like. This is a small version, almost like a doll's house in comparison. And sometimes the models will range from being the size of an A3 sheet of paper up to A2, A1, A0, depending on the depth and complexity of the project. And it is the designer's, the painter's job to consult this model and then to scale it up to be to the specifications of the designer. So it's full scale, so the actors can actually interact with the set at full scale. So sometimes we'll have accompanying blueprints and they'll have other things as well. But that's the shorthand, is seeing a physical representation in a model.
So what skills you will need? You will need to know a lot of maps and geometry, right?
You can do, but there are other people that are figuring out certain things. So some people might come to a painting department and they will have a background in colour and be able to mix colours and understand the colour wheel. Somebody else might be texture. Somebody else like myself, I had more of a sculptural background. So I was there cutting away and trying to get stone effect, and then was being given pointers from the painters on how to actually paint it. So there's lots of different, some people were good at portraiture, some people were good at doing marble effects and things to do with buildings and and geometry, like you say. So it really was a variety of types of experiences that all came together.
So what you're saying is that you need people that have specializations. You don't have one person that does it all. You actually need people doing very different things and all together work organically to create something amazing.
Yes, it can work both ways. Some people are jacks of all trades and can do loads of stuff. And some people are more specialist. Like I was a little bit more specialist and was learning to branch out and understand other areas. Whereas some people have been doing it for years and years, they really could do lots of different things. So it really depends on your own personal level and area that you specialize in.
That's amazing. Do you want to tell me a little bit more about who designed, for example, who decides in the beginning what's going to go where? Is there something like a scenographer, a screenwriter? Who's behind the main decisions here?
Well, I can't say names, but I can say that there are writers, there are producers, and there are people that come and look over the project. They will come to the production workshop where we were, and they will check to see that what we are doing is on track as the artists. For instance, we were building a set for a particular piece, and it looked like a dried out riverbed, and the person that was linked to the designer came along and tried out the steps that we'd carved into it. Literally walked up and down the steps to see if it would be functional for the actors on the day, on location. Walked around on the set to see if it was strong enough, and to make sure that it was right before we even applied colour. This was in the build stage. And then they'd give us little pointers and things to work on. That bit there needs more detail. That needs gouging out more. That needs changing somewhat. And then we would take those notes. They'd go away. We'd make those amendments.
Mm-hmm. So I have two questions, and I don't want to forget. One is, do all these artists behind the scene get together and celebrate when the thing is finished and it looks amazing? And the other question was how important qualifications are compared to experience and knowing what to do. So let's start first with the final thing. So you've been working together as a team, you've been shedding tears and sweating your head, to make a really beautiful piece of art. And then when you finish, everybody claps there, say, well done to the actors, but what about the scene designers and all these people? So how do you celebrate and get rewarded for this amazing work?
No, I didn't know. There was a group of about 4 or 5 of us, all working on each other's work, and then we would switch so that there was a unified feeling and across the whole piece. Otherwise, if everybody worked on one little bit, it would all feel very mismatched and patchworky, and it wanted to feel like one rock area. It wanted to feel organic. So you would work over somebody else's piece that was a certain way. Like somebody wasn't chipping away enough, you'd gouge into it. Or if somebody was chopping away too much, you could even build on top of it and build it out again to make sure it felt like it wasn't out of place.
Yes, you want the same palette for everyone to work with, yeah. Unified style, so teamwork. Does that mean that you do not have a 9-to-5 job if you work for the Royal Albert Hall or for any other theater? You're not going to expect to go there at 8, come back at 5. How does that work?
Well, the usual hours I did were around 8:30 till about 4:15, which is pretty good hours. But there were days when it became crunch time. If you got really close to a production, it needed to be out in a week or two, you need to stay late. You're going to be putting in an extra couple of hours here and there. Some artists would come back on the weekends. I was what they call freelance or a casual worker, is what they call us. So I would come in and I would assist the main artists in getting the work done. But some of the main head artists, or even the full-timers, would come in on the weekends, continue working as well, to make sure that it got done by the deadline.
Yes. You have the lights as well, you have the music. So that makes it really special and wonderful. And of course, I can probably imagine those that are very detailed must be taking notes and thinking, all right, next time I want to do this different because it will work better if, right? So there is a sense of improvement as well. When you watch it, you see, okay, this worked really well. And perhaps you have, do you have something like a sketchbook or a place where you record these experiences and a journal?
Well, thankfully, I think the credit of the scenic arts team is put into the program. So at least you can say, I worked in that, I'm part of that team. You got the bragging right. But the thing that the organization did where I was part of, they gave us free tickets to attend the actual production. So I went to a couple of productions during my time there of places I'd either worked on or were coming off the end of working on. And so you could see some of the work that went into it. You could see how the pieces that you'd worked on fitted into the story and the narrative and how the actors interacted with it. So you got a much better idea of what would be seen, what would not be seen, with all the theatre lights on it and all that. And you could come away with a much better understanding of what was going into your project and how it came out the other end, which was fantastic. It's free theatre.
So much to think about, certainly. So let's go back then to the other question. I had to throw them out before I forgot. So what is the balance here? So you come out of whatever school or university and say, oh, I have a degree in, I don't know, theater, work, something. How is the balance when people are looking into hiring compared to, well, I don't have any qualifications in this field, but I can tell you that I can do this and that. Here's a photographs. So which one is going to be more important, if any, when you are looking for a position in these kind of places?
So there's three ways I probably go about it. One way is somebody who is already part of a team, so who could introduce you in, as a favor or something like that. But the way that I did it was that I found a job as a labourer. They were looking for labourers to be able to help in the build department, take apart the sets, rebuild them, put them onto pallets to send them to location. And that way I was in the building. I was interacting with the different teams, whether it was the painters, the joiners, the metal workers, or the builders. And I was going between all four teams and talking to everybody and having interactions. And that introduced me to the painters, and I was able to show some of my work, on breaks and things like that to the head painters. And that got me noticed that way. But you can study for these things as well and get a degree understanding theatre and stage design. And there are degrees out there that you can attend, that you can find out on the internet. I mean, mine was just outside of London, but my degree was not even really related. I did an animation degree. So they looked at that as well, as I'm creative, I'm making things, I'm drawing things, I'm a sculptor. It's skills that transition and come across that can be used in a different way. So it depends. I think it really helps if you're creative. You need to approach them, email them, buzz on the door, knock on the door. If you can get a degree in a theatre arts background, that's fantastic. I would say make sculptures, make paintings, try different things to show that you have that burning passion as well. But just keep on approaching people.
And show good work. So how much of a textile is there? Because I know there are costume designers, and that is one of my qualifications actually. A costume designer, but so they will be sewing and making this wonderful, really artistic and historical costumes. So of course you will see them as well working, but also there will be tents and drapery. So where do you draw the line of who is a costume designer, who is doing props there?
Right. Okay, that's a whole. Oh, I love this. So right next door to the production, was the costume workshop. It was a different building, but it was right across across the car park in this area. Now, we were in the production house, which is outside of London. There is the main house, the main workshop, which is the centre of London. I worked in both locations at different times. But one of the costume departments was right next to the workshop where we were, and I got to work there as well. And there are ladies, full-time, and also students that come in from colleges, from their degrees and their setups, and they are working on costumes for all over the world. And then they have seamstress understanding, they have understanding of cloth and fabrics, and it's mind-blowing that you walk in the reception and there's this beautiful Elizabethan gown just on a dolly, waiting for you as you walk in the reception, and you just marvel at the artistry. It's mind-boggling, the amount of work that goes into these garments. It's truly spectacular. And then when I went to the main house itself, they have this entire floor developed, devoted to the costumes, all on racks and waiting for the dancers or the actors to be worn, and taken down to stage for whichever production is in session at the time. So yeah, I mean, there are all these different specialities. There's even a hats area, a place that specialized in hats. Hats and headdresses was another department. And it was like walking into the Mad Hatter's workshop, and thinking, oh my goodness, they're putting feathers and quills in hats and putting beads and little details on there and things like that. I mean, this isn't even props. The props department it was like walking into Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, because they've got turtles and they've got statues, and there was a chair that was like a throne that was also a a peacock, and all the feathers opened up, and it was like a mechanical peacock tail opened up behind this throne. And some guy's been sat there figuring out the mechanism of how this thing opens and closes. Somebody else specializes in doing, minor works on costumes, and then somebody else is doing fake food for fake banquets and things like that. There are props that would go on things. Somebody else is doing polystyrene carvings for faces and sculpture. And then somebody else is doing joinery for making, I'll just about near there, somebody else is doing, joinery for all sorts of bits and pieces. It's amazing.
I just gonna have to stop you there and ask you about the food. How do we do with food? How do we make it?
So, it depends. So sometimes the food is wax. I learned something very interesting there. I was talking to the head of the props department, and he was saying, if you can't, if you can buy a prop or buy something that you can get hold of that will cut down on the time that it takes to make something. If you can't find something that's exactly what you want, try and buy something that you can alter to become more like it. So you're cutting down on production time. But then if you can't find anything that's even remotely what the design calls for, then you'll have to bespoke it, you'll have to create it. So sometimes they'll make it from foam and they'll carve it and paint it and put different lacquers on it. This is food. Sometimes they will use wax replicas. Sometimes they will get toys and fake food and then paint up to make it look like something else. So it really depends on the production and how intricate they go into it and how they change it, or so that it fits the brief.
This sounds like a fantastic world where to go and get absolutely lost.
It's amazing, and they even have they make swords. They have a blacksmith on site.
Wow.
And there's a guy. They took on an apprentice. They only have one apprentice. I tried to get in, but they have this one apprentice that they took on, and they have incredible stuff there. So it's amazing.
Wait, you say sword. The next question is armature. Do they have something for soldiers, like big and heavy stuff? Would it be metal?
Yeah. A lot of the productions were quite either military based or historically based. So you have people coming in from uprisings and people from battles and putting characters from all sorts of different wars and things like that. So there are different time periods that these weapons would be part of. And of course that goes with the costume. So the weapon has to go with the appropriate costume, and the costumes have to go with the correct props or vehicles. They'd even have vehicles changed and repurposed for the stage. So it's amazing.
Wow, it's amazing. We're ending our time very soon, so I'm gonna have to go down to the last two questions.
Yeah, go for it.
The first one is, what is the most challenging part of working for a theater? Doesn't have to be a big theater like Royal Albert Hall, but any theater. What would be the most difficult that might put people off?
Some people that might find harsh deadlines a chore might not like it. You have to work to a certain deadline and get it done by that deadline to the specifics of the designer. You're not just making something you want to make, you're doing it for a production for somebody specific. Sometimes there's a lot of repetition as well, because you are trying to get a very specific effect. Like, for instance, I did lots of prayer schools and was sanding them down and then putting all these lacquers and graphites on to make them more polished. So sometimes I would be working on some bits and pieces that I would have to redo with different graphites and polishers and things like that to get a certain effect.
So yeah, a lot of artists like to be kind of free, but if you're working for a company, a designer or whatever, you have to really stay to these deadlines and produce when you're supposed to produce and to that specification. I would have thought which is quite good. Is there anything like people who are very important characters there and they kind of bossy people around that can put you off, or they want to shine and so you feel like, oh my gosh, like prima donna type of people there?
There are people that work for the company that I would possibly say fit that description. But as artists, the artists quite often stay within their bubble 90+% of the time. Sometimes people will come around and view your work. It happens to be a big enough company that they would have tours. Tours come through and then check out the workshop. But there are big profile names that would work for the company, that were on the books of the company, that would be used to certain things done a certain way, let's say.
So that makes sense. Yeah. Thank you. The last question is, of course, what is the best part? Why should people who are creative embark in a perhaps university study or self-study or whatever journey, a path they will take them to work in a theater? You have 2 minutes left. Off you go.
The great thing about working for a theatre company is that it employs so many different skills. So you're going to expand your understanding as an artist. I think that's how I can put it quite simply. There are so many different areas. There's so many different areas to enjoy and grow in. And as the projects come in, you adapt to that project. Your skill set adapts to that thing that you're working on at the time. And if it wasn't for coronavirus, I would happily still be there right now. I really would. Yeah, it's a magical place to work, and anybody that's career-minded and creative and artistic, I would say go try it. It's fantastic, and I hope, all speed to you. Work hard and do your best.
Thank you, Steve. It's been remarkable. It really shows just how many possibilities you have to really do all the visual, kinesthetic, audio, and tactile part of working in art. Really, I think that is going to work wonders if you are using that for your wellness, for your mental happiness, right? And I will want to maybe discuss in the future how is the situation that we have nowadays with this virus, how is that affecting theater work and the mood of people who work in art. But that is maybe material for a whole entire episode to see where the artists are going, where they're gathering, where they're doing wonderful work. Well, it's been a pleasure to have you around again, Stephen. I hope we can do more episodes. And of course, anyone who is listening, if you liked what you heard today and if you want to have more information about how to make it in art, how to use art to find your own happiness, please click share, subscribe, share with your friends, tell them to listen and to ask us questions, because I will find a specialist every time so we can help you to move forward in this journey. So thank you so much for everyone that has helped here. Thank you very much to Steve for being here today, and I hope to be able to help you all in the next journey towards mindfulness, happiness, and being a full artist. So for now, take care everyone, and bye-bye.
Bye.
You have listened to another episode of Create with Franz. It's all about art.